Welcome to the Microsoft Partner Network podcast. Every week, we bring in industry leaders and Microsoft partners to talk about the big ideas shaping business and technology today. In today's episode, we speak with Kevin Conroy, the president and founder of Blue Rooster, about change management and the new world of SaaS pricing. Welcome, Kevin. We're excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Kevin is an all-star partner that we love to talk to. I wanted you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us about yourself. You're an entrepreneur, truly at heart. You have a wine company. Let us in.
Well, hey, everybody. Kevin here, and thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate being here. Love doing these things. So Blue Rooster was a labor of love. We started it in 2000. We were doing UX before anybody even knew what UX was on top of SharePoint. Really trying to drive adoption of SharePoint and how do we help big companies and small companies figure out how to use SharePoint. And that really built itself into this really interesting business around user experience and user interface and all the moving parts there. Services company, and over the years it got more and more complex, and I think the process for building on top of SharePoint got more complex, and then in 2013, 2014, really the market was shifting towards how do we make it into a product. The cloud was on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Yeah.
And so we built it into a product, and that product got acquired, and I'm doing a bunch of consulting now, and it's super exciting. And
you make it seem very simple, Kevin.
No, it wasn't. There's a lot of speed bumps along the way, and I think the topic today for the SaaS pricing, I call it Voodoo MRR. How do we help partners figure out how to price solutions in the new kind of world of work and the new cloud environment, and that's where I'm spending 99% of my time right now. So it's pretty fun.
So before we talk pricing, what's kind of amazing what you did was make this pivot. And this is what we talk a lot to our partners about. How do you move from being a systems integrator, project services, and moving into IP? You said you developed a product. What's the product called?
It was called Rise Foundation, and
okay.
Proficient bought that product. It's called Rise now by them.
So tell me, how did you do that? What are the things? What were some of the problems that came up?
Yeah, I think the big one was we were working with one of our clients, big multinational client, and they were like, "Can't we make this easier? Can't this be simpler to do?" Everything was taking very long to do, and they're like, I can buy Azure-based services and use that server in minutes after spinning it up. Why does this take so long? And so, we fundamentally looked at our business and said, how can we make it easier to work with Blue Rooster? And that's what started that conversation. And really, it was all the different conversations that were happening at the time at WPC and the SharePoint conferences, and seeing the move to the cloud and Office 365 was pretty new, but there was a lot of movement to move mail to Office 365, and so the wave there was this was going to happen eventually. We got to get on board with it, but it was a process. I mean, it took us a long time to kind of turn the ship, so to speak. But then I decided to kind of go all in, and I don't know if I would make the same call today. I'd probably do it a little differently. Now hindsight's obviously 2020, but overall, I'm very happy with how we did it and what we did. But it's a big move for a lot of partners, and I think that's a strong theme that partners reach out and call me about all the time. There's a big team here at Microsoft that we work with, the influencers, and we're trying to help other, how do we get more partners to kind of look at the big picture and where things are going, and that's a focus.
So why, in hindsight, would you have done it differently? What would you have done differently?
I think you can drive a services business side by side with a product business. I think at the time everybody was saying product. You can't do both. I think that's not necessarily the case now. I think there's a much more agreeable marketplace out there that you can kind of run these things in parallel. A lot of companies are doing them very successfully. I think the companies that are managed services have a much easier time putting IP out there and saying these are things to help our businesses. But I think the pure services play is getting harder. I mean, I see it. I mean, these are partners that call me, and we discuss all the time. And there's a bunch of them out there. How do we make how do you keep your billable rates high? I mean, just getting down to brass tacks. What you have to pay people nowadays is expensive, and making that margin on those billable hourly rates is getting harder and harder. And it's those are the stresses on the business. And at the same time, you have the cost to do cloud-based business is decreasing every day. So those are the realities in the IT in the CIO office right now.
I think that billable rate that you're talking about is kind of interesting, because are you saying that you need to hire really great talent and that they're more expensive, or kind of go into that a little bit? Because something that
that's spot on. So you got to go hire the best and the brightest,
and that's hard to find because there is a talent gap.
Yeah, I mean, there's if we could draw the X and Y charts here, we got to get the really smart people. There's really big companies out there going after those really smart people, so that's another thing that's hurting you. You have like in the local Seattle marketplace, we have all the big tech companies, the Amazons, the Microsofts, and everybody else, and the Googles coming in. So they're all looking for the same people. You have to have really amazing benefits. So these are all your cost drivers to attract these people. And then your client is saying, hey, why are you charging me, I mean, we even hear about, why are you charging me $150 an hour, which is really kind of a kind of a base level rate. And you kind of laugh, go, oh my God, my costs are, getting close to that. I'm paying somebody, at just about that cost basis when you look in your layered costs in a metropolitan market like Seattle, San Francisco, metropolitan like those. So yeah, it's very difficult.
So when you're working with partners and you're thinking a little bit about making those pricing models, and I think we could talk about the SaaS kind of piece, but when you talk about, how do you do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a couple things that I see continually is that there's still I would say the perception in the marketplace with Microsoft ISV partners is to continue to price things based on server pricing or the typical enterprise agreement where it's a 1, 2, 3-year agreement with 20 to 30% services percentage tacked on top of that. And for the most part, there's thousands of Microsoft partners out there that have built their businesses that way and have been very successful at that. And the marketplace is definitely changing. I mean, we need not look any further than Microsoft. And you buy Azure on a consumption basis, you buy Office based on a seat count, a SaaS price. And I think what the marketplace wants is more of that seat price. What's it going to cost me to add that extra user? And so what I try to work on with partners is how do you get over this MRR, this monthly recurring revenue number, to start making your business relevant and see the big picture. And a real great example is I work with a client in Portugal, Buying Tuning, and I know Beatrice at Buying Tuning. She's wonderful, and we've done some amazing work out there, transforming how she prices her solutions into a SaaS model. And it's taken us a while. I mean, I think, you have to, there's a little bit of Kool-Aid to be consumed here. But we're seeing the growth, the exponential growth is just nothing short of phenomenal. But you're getting away from, I'll just take kind of an extreme, when you start looking at the model of you're just taking your enterprise agreement and you're saying, all right, I'm going to charge this out per person per month. A lot of partners are in the double digit numbers, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. And I tend to look at it a little differently. And I'm like, well, if you can go buy, the full Office 365 suite for $5 and you're getting Excel and Word and all these other things, why are we charging all these other? So really bringing that down and getting that cost down into the single digits and really a small number to drive volume, not necessarily, the quality. Like, I don't need $50 a user. I need $1 a user, and I want millions of users every month. And that's where we're kind of going. I think Buying Tuning is a great example. We've definitely proven the model out. It works. I have a couple other partners that we're working on the same thing, but I call it voodoo. There's a little bit of, there's a lot of trial and error.
Official term.
It's it's a technical term. Look it up. Yeah. There's a lot of work that goes into that. I build pretty extensive models to look at this. What's the trend for 3 years? Are you going to see a decrease in revenue your first year? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. I think you're going to be okay. You're really going to be okay. And I think you start to look at the momentum for those reoccurring numbers. The market has shown in not just Microsoft. You look at Salesforce, you look at some of these other companies that are very, very successful. How do you break down those barriers to have companies adopt your products easier? And that goes for your services too. So that's it right there. And we see all these disruptive technologies right now, the Ubers and the Amazon, AWS, and all these other things that come into non-traditional marketplaces and they make them very disruptive. Don't be that company that didn't make the change. And that's kind of my message. And
part of what you're talking about is scaling.
Yeah.
What you're building the pricing and the SaaS model in a way that it can scale.
Right.
And that is the golden ticket, It seems. So when you work with your partners, when you're developing these pricing models and these solutions, is it very unique or there's some common threads?
There's some common threads. I think the ones that I really like to latch onto are the ones where like, oh, we only need to license it to the actual users. Well, no, let's not look at licensing 10 people in a company. Let's look at licensing all 1,000 people in the company. Because once you kind of get that beachhead into the company, you can push other things into that person's hands. So, maybe your products are very unique solution, so maybe only the content creators need it, for example. But what about all the other people that could just consume that information with maybe a graph or a chart or KPIs or something around that makes sense in that marketplace? I don't know what that is, but those are the conversations I like to have. Like, how can we extend your model? How can we expand your model and make it so this is not a huge cost driver for their business day to day? And I think you're looking at. I say, and it's not fair, I say pennies per user per month. That's what we want. We want pennies per user per month. And I think that's a big conversation for some companies. And I think even like with fine tuning, she had to, Beatrice, very strong-minded businesswoman in Portugal, which this gets back to I kind of have fun with this one. I like to say it's a unicorn, it's this great technology and it's in Portugal, just about a socialist country, and we're driving some really cool innovation there with a SaaS product. So it's like, what doesn't belong here? But we spent a lot of time talking models. We spent a lot of time talking about, are we moving the needle? Do we see the growth? Does it make sense? Are people buying it? And then also too, you got to look at what the customer base is saying too. We still get the customers, and they're usually on the enterprise side, say, I want to buy the product outright. Can't you just put support on the back end of that, Right. So you still have a lot of the big guys that want to do it that way, but the SMBs and the mid-market customers, they're all for it.
They're
looking for a price per user, and they're looking for a low price per user, and you get some velocity in your sales channel, and that makes your business easier to you're easier to transact with, and that's the other thing too, is like, look at your transaction costs. What's it take you to close a deal? Time, money, these expensive people, salespeople are expensive. Websites are expensive. Technology, all the marketing stuff you have to do, stay in compliance with Microsoft, all that's expensive. How can you spread those over a bigger, broader market? So that's a big piece of it.
You need a lot of seats.
You need a lot of seats.
You need a lot of seats. And some of that, though, what you're talking about too is just the customer. Figuring out what is that story. And what you're saying is they're wanting a low price per user, right? And you find that to be the case with with the partners you work with and the customers. That's a pretty common.
Yeah, and speed too. Like when somebody's reaching out to engage you, Mr. Partner, Ms. Partner, whatever you want to look at this, they have a need. Mm-hmm. Fill that need quickly. Make it easy. Yeah. Don't make it hard. Back in the day, Blue Rooster, we used to literally get on airplanes and go see these people and pitch them these big projects and sell these things. And
right.
I look back at it now and I go, God, it was so hard to do business with us. And you see that today. You even see that, these big enterprises, hey, do you want to come make a presentation to us? How about I just do a live meeting? I can do this in 30 minutes over a web connection, and I'll show you the value. If you don't get it in 30 minutes, then we're probably not the right fit for you. So we spent a lot of time on that.
So truly is a little bit of the old and new, right?
Oh yeah, it's changing.
And that is the digital transformation, I guess, that we at Microsoft keep talking about, but you see it very often. It's real.
And it's, I think the enterprise customer may be the last customer coming this way, but they're coming, and they're coming in a big way. And, the number of hybrid deals that I see on a daily basis with fine tuning are pretty astronomical. The number of companies that said, hey, we're going to do these work streams in the cloud. You didn't hear that 5 years ago. I don't know if you even heard it 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now it's the reality. And, props to the Microsoft teams, especially the SharePoint team. I mean, they've kind of rebuilt and resurrected what people said was a dead product, and they've done an amazing job with it. It's fantastic. It works. The 365 offering is unbelievable. And that's another message for partners too. If you're relying only on the old school server business at Microsoft, it's time to reevaluate your business, because I think if it hasn't hit your bottom line today, it's hitting, because those customers are it's not cost effective any longer to stay out of the cloud. And it's just not. I mean, and if you're still with a customer that has a big data center, you got to really look at, what's going on with that leadership too, because it's changing. Yeah.
It kind of indicates that
like what's wrong with that business, right? It's like it's
the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, And there's still a lot of people that say, well, look, AWS went down this week, Yeah, there's still some human stuff that happens in the marketplace, but for the most part, it's very positive. I mean, Azure's amazing. 365 is amazing. Your Dynamics is now, in the cloud. So I think there's all these work streams that you have to look at and say, this is not a fad. This isn't, Y2K. This is something way more important. Did I just date myself there? Yeah,
no, you didn't date yourself.
Something like 20 years ago.
No. Do you think, you talked about with the enterprise, and you talked about SMBs. I mean, when you're talking to partners, do you find that is a certain customer that might be the best to go after given your kind of capabilities as a partner? Certain matches are made better, or certain opportunities are better, or it's everybody's fair game almost if you can kind of speak well with your customer and deliver a solution?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the lessons at Blue Rooster was we could never figure out how to go down market, meaning we couldn't figure out how to get smaller customers. The 100-person, the 500-person companies, which are big. Those are big companies. You don't realize it, like, oh my God, you're 500 employees. That's a really nice sized company,
Yeah.
And that has some market velocity and momentum, and and we couldn't figure it out. We were our solution from a services perspective and the people that we had, way too expensive to do that. So yeah, you got to look at that and say, how do I figure that out so it makes sense? And it's not selling your product at $50 a seat. It really isn't. It's selling when you're in that, if you're 150 employees, you want to spend about $10 a year on it. It's literally, less than $1 a month. And those are conversations that for a lot of partners, you're just like, what?
I mean, I kind of, when you just said that, I'm surprised that low.
Yeah, but I have data that I could sit down. I could sit down and show you, and you'd be like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense to go have 100 of those accounts, and they take very little servicing, and that's providing a nice piece of revenue, and your margin on it's going to be really nice, and you're going to be kind of shocked at how that works. But I mean, I have to keep plugging fine tuning. I'm not trying to dominate this conversation with it, but that's a 12-person company.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about that for a minute. You don't need this overhead structure to support all that. So
yeah.
And you really look at the velocity. How much velocity? How many seats per month are you servicing? And look at your current business. and just say, okay, I have 5 enterprise customers and 4 CADM accounts and 3 mid, and just look at how many people you're servicing and what kind of revenue are you getting when you just do the math, when you run out the math. I think you would be surprised what you see there.
Yeah, I'm sure I would be.
It really is.
What is also important, right, though, is doing managed services in some sense, right? When you're talking with your partners, because you're talking about, getting the seats in. What happens after you do that? Yeah,
so I think the biggest thing that I hear, I talk to a lot of accounts, both as part of the influencers group at Microsoft and also my work with Bind Tuning and other partners. I'm talking to their clients all the time, and I am really surprised every time I talk to somebody that said, well, I used to have a SharePoint team, or I used to have an Exchange team, or I used to have a bunch of developers on staff, and they don't have that anymore. So now they look to the low cost model. They're looking to a partner to do their managed services. They're looking for somebody to help them with desktop support. They're looking for somebody to help them with Office 365 support. Can you help them provision Azure and make that easy for them? And so the managed services business, in my opinion, is the easiest low-hanging fruit out there. And that's you're not just going after the SMB business. I'm not talking about the 5-person, hairdresser. I'm talking about the 50-person company, the 100-person company, the up to 5,000, 500 to 1,000. I mean, those are companies that have real pain every day, that are not allocating the budget for big IT staffs anymore, and they're saying, "Hey, we'll do that on a SaaS pricing model." And I think you got to look at it as not doing it as, "Hey, I'm going to charge you, $1,000 a month." That doesn't really resonate right now. I mean, you get in front of a CFO that's especially a modern CFO or a COO. They're gonna want to have some sort of variable component there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a big deal. And the companies that are doing it they're growing really nicely. And then they're figuring out how to take IP and package with that too, and automate things and some of those functionalities. I think we're seeing it. It's happening.
Yeah. Where did the name Blue Rooster come from?
Oh, wow. I haven't had that question. I swear to God, true story. I was in my previous life, I was a contractor out here at Microsoft, and we were doing a bunch of projects. This is back in the day of educational conferences and stuff, and that's kind of really where Blue Rooster started. And I was working on a project, and somebody referred to me as a rare bird, and blue is my favorite color. I went and Googled rare birds. It was a rooster, so that's where it came from. And then it just kind of all fell together. I kind of met this crazy Russian guy on a big bike tour in Europe. He happened to own the URL, bluerooster.com. And I just kind of random, and he's like, "Oh, I'll sell it to you," And so literally I bought bluerooster.com and rebranded it. And so anyhow, that's a true story.
I love that story.
Yeah, so it was pretty fun.
Okay, my other question is about your wine company.
Brother-in-law is a winemaker down in Napa, rock star, Mike Blom. He started a winery down there called Madorum. Uh-huh. My sister is a CFO in the wine industry and does Joel Gott Wines and a bunch of other fun stuff. And her background was Diageo before that. And so one day I said, my brother-in-law was like, "Hey, let's make a little wine." So we did make a little wine, and we did that for 10 years, and I still got a bunch of it, and it's amazing. Another friend of mine was doing a blind taste testing here at Pacific Place and the 509 cab. It's our labels, 509.
509 cab.
509, yeah. It's a play on the area code for Eastern Washington. Uh-huh. And we did a blind taste testing against all these wines, and crazy, we came out as the #1 wine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I just got married down there too. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, it was pretty fun to get married in Napa and got married in the vineyards, and amazing experience. So I love that.
So you have a wine company, you have a rooster company. You continue to iterate as you see the changes coming. That's what I can learn from you, Kevin. What is some advice that you can give to partners as they're looking at their business, they're looking at their pricing, they're looking about potentially selling to a company, which you've experienced? What are some key pieces of advice?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of change right now in the Microsoft partner community. I know, we're a part of this influencers team where we're trying to make sure we're kind of on kind of the pointy end of the spear to make sure we're figuring these things out. There's a lot of momentum around helping partners change. I think there's a lot of resources. I think if your business is still very, very much stuck in the, the enterprise agreement days or the selling a package solution and selling it outright, there's resources to help you kind of modernize your business. And there's a lot of people like me that are consulting and helping people out. I think it's a great time to be a Microsoft partner, not without its share of scariness and change, but I think it's really exciting what's happening. And I think the leadership here too has done an amazing job of putting Microsoft back on the map as far as, this is where the future is, and, kind of get on board with it. And I think that's very exciting, but it's time to really look at your business and kind of figure out what you're doing. And, a lot of us, like myself, we had Blue Rooster for, 15 years before we sold it. And, you start getting into that many years of being in business, you get a little static, you get a little stale, maybe a little complacent. It's time to mix it up and kind of review what you're doing. And, events like Inspire, are really important, I think, to go to and hear the message. There's some really strong messages. I remember the first time, or not the first time, one of the WPCs I went to, and there was a Gartner analyst there talking about the growth of the cloud. And I just remember going, we know nothing about the cloud and how does that impact our business?
Right.
And then we had a big enterprise customer, total sidebar story here, that say, the day that I use the Microsoft clouds is the day that we're out of business. And now they're more than 50% of the cloud. I'm not going to name the company name, but I remember the CIO at a dinner one night saying that. I'm just like, oh, okay. Why would Microsoft know more about the cloud than us? And so it was kind of one of those funny conversations. And now you look back at that, 10 years later, and you're kind of going, yeah, it's really a big deal now. And, if you're a partner company still taking 9 months to close transactions or 6 months to close transactions, there's some conversations that can be had there, and your sales cycle and your velocity could be shortened and increased. So I'll say that much. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity for partners out there. Thank you for coming in, Kevin.
Hey, thank you. This is a lot of fun.
We appreciate it.
I always love coming in and talking to you guys. Obviously, I have a problem talking too, so
thank you.
It's been fun.
Thanks for listening today, and check out the podcast description for show notes. Be sure to subscribe and keep in touch with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at MS Partner.